Hey everyone, Sam here, and today I want to be going over how to overcome cravings and break habits and build better ones. Now, I recently done a workout with a group of teachers on Zoom, and one of the most often asked question I had was, hey, I've got cravings, how do I deal with them? Even in clients that I have, most weeks when we do like our check-ins and our feedback, most of the time it's kind of revolving around cravings. So I want to kind of go over them, all right, today, just give you some basic ideas of how to change them, how to kind of break out of that cycle, and how to build a better routine with your diet so you don't kind of feel like you're slipping back into those cravings again, which kind of ruin your progress, get you demotivated, get you frustrated, and get you back into that vicious cycle again. Because obviously that's not what we want, is it? We want you to kind of get stronger, leaner, fitter, and have a better relationship with food. All right, one that doesn't get you maybe so restrictive or craving all the time and acting on those cravings. Because at the end of the day, when we want to get in better shape, a large part of that is our food, right, and our diet. And if we can maintain and adhere to a better standards, then you'll get better results as a whole. All right. So when we talk about cravings, right, cravings come in many shapes and forms. The biggest one, like obviously chocolate, wine, whatever it may be, okay? And there's certain things that we can do to kind of work around the cravings and establish what really is the ultimate problem, right? And how we can fix it. So it starts with awareness, okay? It starts with you understanding and appreciating like what happens and why it's happening. So a very simple thing, like with Alcoholics Anonymous or something similar, you may have seen like the HALT method, right? And most cravings, most binges on those cravings come from like being hungry, being angry, being lonely, or being tired, right? If you look back at most of the cravings you have, you can probably categorize them and why they happen to one of those 4 different categories, right? Either we're really hungry, we're really angry, all right, so we're kind of stress eating. We're generally quite lonely, all right, so perhaps we're on our own or we're feeling sorry for ourselves, etc. And we're pretty tired, maybe a really poor night's sleep. And we know for a fact that when you have a poor night's sleep, it kind of messes up a little bit with like hormonal function, hormonal balance, and we generally do feel a lot hungrier as a result of poor quality sleep. So one of the big things that you can do is actually just improving the sleep patterns, improving the sleep quality, and that makes a drastic change. You can read a book, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It goes into great depth about sleep and building better routines and establishing a better sleep cycle, sleep hygiene, okay? And you'll generally find a lot of cravings actually do subside because of that. But if they don't, then obviously there's something else behind it, and that's what we're going over today. Stress and boredom as well. So I know when I haven't got much on, there's a lot of things on my mind, and food is definitely one of them. And it's probably the same for yourself as well. Okay, so if there's a lot of time in a day or you're bored, you want to fill that time up. One of the ways of filling them up is by eating something. Yeah, stress as well. If we're mega stressed, some people go crazy and eat heavy, some people don't and go the opposite way. All right, but a lot of the time people do go and they kind of stress eat, they emotionally eat, right? Whoever may be, have maybe a dependency on certain types of foods to make us feel better in that specific moment. And restriction as well. So your diet is really important. What type of diet you have is crucial for your long-term sustainability, right? Like the goal isn't to have an 8-week program, get in great shape in 8 weeks and not build and sustain those habits going forward. It's to maintain those same standards and habits and make it a lifestyle, make it a change, all right? Make it sustainable. Because if it's not sustainable, you're gonna go through this kind of vicious cycle where you do really well, then you drop off, and you do really well, and you drop off, all right? And that's not something we want, right? We wanna kind of get it breaking out of that cycle. So understanding the diet on, if you love carbohydrates and a ketogenic diet, like it's not gonna work for you, is it? Because you enjoy your carbohydrates too much, all right? So finding a solution, finding a balance that works for you, that fits your lifestyle, fits your identity, fits your mold, will be great in terms of making that sustainable, okay? Can you, whatever diet you're on, like there's a lady on that workout who was talking about juicing, right? Every morning she's enjoying juicing, but she's not sure how long she keep it up for, but she's seeing results. It's fantastic, but like, is it sustainable in the long run? How can she take herself off of those juices and make it sustainable going forward without putting the weight back on, all right? So you have to be careful and mindful of what you're restricting, okay, and whether you're able to maintain that long term, okay. A few things we can kind of focus on, right, when we go on about awareness. So it's like, when does it happen? I know for a fact that when I have a session at 5 p.m. in the evening, I always have a green tea. I've just made it a really random habit. I have a green tea with a workout on a Zoom in the evening. I don't know why I do it, but I just do. But some of the time, when does it happen? Perhaps it's when you're watching Netflix and you're chilling in the evening, and you and your partner are there sitting, and one of you goes, "Oh, should we grab a bit of popcorn? Should we grab a few biscuits or a bit of cake, whatever?" There's always going to be a trigger that effectively counters that, right? So I'll go into triggers later on. I don't want to mention now, but I'll go into trigger later on. But there's always going to be a time or a place, whatever, that it happens, okay? Where are you? So you could be on your sofa, you could be in your office, you could be chatting to someone, yeah? There's many different areas where it could be and where you are. Who are you with? Are you with your significant other? Are you with your sister, your brother, your parents? Are you with perhaps someone that isn't really respectful of their health in general, and you lower your standards to theirs? What's the trigger? So it could be having a phone call from a significant other, like a family, co-worker, etc. And that perhaps might be a reminder that you get stressed and you act on that stress, right? It could be the fact that when you finish that phone call, you always have like a biscuit or 3 biscuits, or you could have like some popcorn or some crisps, etc. because it makes you feel stressed. So there's going to be a certain trigger. For me, like I said, my trigger is having a 5 p.m. session on a Tuesday and Friday. I don't know why, I just now associated that meeting or that workout with a green tea. But like, so we can go from that, right? And we can kind of go into breaking the chain. So this is kind of taken from precision nutrition, right? When we talk about, it's actually a course I'm going through in a moment, but when we have a certain habit, okay, we can start to change the habit by breaking the chain, right? First off, we identify the food. So is it chocolate? Is it a glass of wine? Is it some cake? And know the environment you're in. Like I said earlier, right? It's like, when does it happen? Who are you with? Where are you? So you have to understand the environment, right? And know where you are. It could be, like I said, on the sofa. It could be a lunch break. It could be a few different environments at that specific time. If you go back further as well, look at hours and days before that. What led to that point of having the splurge, having the intake of calories, the binge? Okay, it could be the fact that you go back a few hours and something happened, something triggered it. It could be a few days. If you, for instance, like you're on your cycle, it could be a few days before your period starts, right? You generally find, I generally find as well, like cravings increase a few days before in the menstrual cycle, right? So that could be a certain trigger as well, right? And based off looking at the hours ahead of time, even days ahead, knowing where you are, identifying the food, can you see any patterns? Do any patterns emerge? Perhaps I do, perhaps I don't. But take your time and be patient, understand, like, and try and fit together if there's any patterns, any situations. It could be, like I said, on your cycle a few days before period starts, like it could be, that's always the pattern, right? Like I said, or every single 5 p.m. I have a green tea. It's not a binge, it's just a green tea, right? But that could be your pattern, right? Every Tuesday and Friday. It could be every Saturday night when you get together with your friends. That could be a pattern as well. And stay curious, be open-minded about it, right? No, don't just look at it now, but look ahead of time as well. And kind of find and see if there's, like, see if you can identify patterns going forward as well. So don't just like start thinking about it and spend 2 minutes thinking about it, but be curious. Perhaps ask other people if they've had similar issues or similar problems. See if they notice any patterns that you have as well, okay? Or any behaviors that they feel they can highlight, perhaps which is kind of outside the box thinking that you may not have thought of. And then obviously identify the solution around that, okay? So there's a few solutions here. Like, first off, we can obviously substitute the food, okay? Which is generally obviously pretty easy. We can understand the trigger. Like I said, if we have like a busy work meeting, or when our mum calls or a colleague calls, that's always mega stressed and it makes you stressed, that's a trigger. Like, do you have to answer that phone call? I know it sounds bad, but do you? Like, if you're looking to get in better shape and be in better shape physically, mentally, socially, perhaps that environment, that phone call doesn't lead you to be that person you want to become, right? So perhaps it may be a time to reduce the volume of interaction with that person or that environment, right? Like I said, change your environment. It could be the people you spend time with, right? In terms of, they see you average of 5 people around you, right? And like I said on another like video, and what I saw recently is, if you have obese friends, you're 57% more likely to be obese yourself. All right, and that means that like, perhaps if we were in an environment which doesn't cater to where we want to get to, okay, we keep our standards, all right, and our rituals, we kind of keep them at a lower level than where we want to get to, which doesn't really help us kind of push that next level. Join forces, like team up with a friend, okay, or a colleague, or whoever it may be, someone that's perhaps looking to do what you want to do, and keep each other accountable, okay, because having accountability is really important. I know for a fact that when I'm in here working out on my own, it's a lot easier to kind of miss the last few reps or miss the last few sets and be on my phone and be distracted than it is if I was with someone, and it's a lot harder working out with them, right? Because now I keep myself accountable to them. They're pushing themselves, I'm pushing myself. All right, change your surroundings as well. Okay, perhaps you want to be in an environment like a coach like myself, and you want to be in an environment where people are already at the level you want to get to, and you're looking to aspire to be their level, right? It's a lot easier. Like, I know when I've done like business coaching in the past, right? When I've been the dumbest person in the room, and as I've been the dumbest person in the room, I've always pushed to the kind of level that I've been trying to attain, because those people are already there, right? And so they've kind of raised their standards, and it's up to me to raise my standards, all right? So perhaps it is changing your surroundings. Visualize yourself as well. Like, visualize yourself actually not being that person, okay? Visualize yourself not acting on the urges or the cravings. Because just because we have the cravings doesn't necessarily mean we need to act on them, right? I know it sounds silly, but we just need to appreciate and understand that, right? Just because we're hungry doesn't mean we have to act on it, okay? Hunger is a sign, it's just a signal, okay? There's nothing more to it in a general term, and then it just being hunger, right? And say like, but as well, like, I always eat the cake. Say like, I'll always give in, but I don't have to anymore, yeah? So if you can finish when you finish a sentence like, I always give in to cravings, or I can't stop eating the cake, just say but, and then put a positive spin on the end. So, I can't stop eating the cake, but next time I'll try to be better. Yeah, it's something so basic, right? But just allowing us to elaborate kind of opens our minds from that kind of fixed mindset to that kind of growth mindset that we're trying to aspire to, okay? And just trying to change the language that we speak in our head. And then lastly, plan for failure, right? We're humans, like, we're not meant to be perfect all the time. Like I said to people, it's like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time, can you be great? And 20% of the time, okay, like, you may mess up. But that is perfection, right? 80-20 is perfection, that's what you're shooting for. 80-85%, can you manage that? In a weekly basis, like I said, if there's 35 meals in a week, perhaps 28 of them are great, but the other 7 might not be so great. That's not a problem. We're just shooting for consistency, not perfection. So understand that you will mess up, all right? And if you appreciate that you'll mess up from time to time, it makes it a lot easier to deal with the consequences, right? It makes it a lot easier to deal in our mind, because we haven't felt like we've slipped up, because we already know it's coming. And lastly, like, big thing as well, like, we're not looking to eliminate the habit entirely, we're just looking to replace it, yeah? So if you can substitute the food, like I said, because there's always going to be times you're going to be bored, when you're going to be stressed, when you're going to be hungry, tired, lonely. So perhaps you need to do something in that time, but you can just change it and replace it, right? If it is, like I said, being on the phone to someone in the evening, and like a colleague, and they're always stressed, and it kind of makes you stressed as well, and then you kind of act on an emotional kind of like response, and you kind of eat food or you binge, etc. Then perhaps just having a workout or a walk in a period of time to calm yourself down and make you feel better. So you're kind of changing the actual cue, okay? But you're just replacing it with something different, all right? Sweet, then we can move on to like I said earlier, right? In terms of the reminder, the routine, and the reward, that's kind of like what habits are, all right? In terms of, like I said earlier, that trigger, the reminder, so something happens like a meeting or a phone call, or I don't know, a text message, or a certain time of night, maybe when there's a TV program going on, like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. All right, then the routine. What's the routine that you have? Is it open up a bottle of wine? Is it having that bit of chocolate? And then what's the reward you want from it? Most of the time, we want to get rid of this kind of feeling, right? hungry, angry, loneliness, and tiredness, and tired. So most of the time, we're kind of focusing on that, right? It's perhaps being bored or being tired, so having that bit of food or that bit of cake gets rid of boredom because it fills time up. Or perhaps it kind of reduces stress, or perhaps it kind of decreases our tiredness because we just had some food and it gives us a bit of energy. Okay, but there's other things you can do to that, right? If your reward is like stress or boredom, what other routines can you do which give you the same reward? Yeah, what other things can you do to replace that? Like I said earlier down here on the other board, that changes the changes the routine that you have from that kind of unhealthy, kind of like vicious cycle to one that gives you the same reward and the same response, but you feel much better for it. So once we have all of that, right, we can then start to like build the better habits, build the routines, all right? So like I said, it's not about getting and eliminating that the binge or the kind of craving, right? But it's just replacing it. So we can kind of, like I said, replace the routine, but still get the same reward. How can we do that, right? First off, we want to start small. Like when we talk about habits and healthy habits, we want to make sure that what we do, we can win straight away, right? If there's certain things you want to do, which is, I don't know, going for a 5-minute walk or eating a certain amount of food or drinking a certain amount of water, whatever it may be, just start small, okay? Start small, make it so you can win every single day, all right? And then we want to make sure these incremental steps. Sometimes we jump way too advanced. We want to change one meal. We say like, hey, let's change breakfast, because most of the time in breakfast I eat poorly or on the go, and then it's like, oh, actually, let's change lunch and dinner as well, and let's eat well for whole 7 days and every single meal a day. Well, no, if we only focus on the breakfast first and just focus on perhaps the snack that's after, or focus on the lunch that's after that. Just make it really small and make sure you keep winning. Constantly ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy is this for me to implement? If it's 10 out of 10, very easy, or 1 out of 10, really hard. And if you're getting like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, all right, on that routine, or the habit you're trying to create, like if it's a 5 out of 10, then chances are you're not really going to be consistent with it, right? But if it's like an 8, 9, or 10 out of 10, then shoot for it, okay? And continue to do that. And if it isn't, like I said, if it's a 5 or a 6 out of 10, take it back even further, all right? Make the steps smaller. It means that you're just going too far ahead too quickly, and then you make it unsustainable, all right? Which has kind of led to this kind of binging kind of good habits, bad habits, on-off, like cycle that we're on. All right, and then control the controllables. So a lot of times when stuff goes wrong, all right, it's because we're generally thinking and trying to control external stuff that's not in our mind, not in our control. Okay, so just make sure that you understand and you only control what you can control, and only try and keep on top of what you can manage, right? And then lastly, stay patient and practice patience, okay? Because you're not going to be perfect. No one is perfect. I know like if you go to university, for instance, right? It takes you 3, 4, 5 years to finish a course. I know my cousin, it's like 9 years into his university. It's patience, right? It's a lot of patience to get your qualifications. With fitness, it's the same thing, right? You don't qualify or you don't pass on day 1, day 2. It's like year 3, year 4, year 5. You're constantly chipping away and building that patience, building that resilience, building that body, that mind. All right, over time. You don't pass on day 1. There's no kind of pass grade, right? So you have to maintain patience and just keep building the small steps over time. And if all else fails, all right, and perhaps those cravings you have just keep coming back and you can't break bad habits and you can't build better ones, like what can you do instead? So if all else fails and you just can't control the cravings of chocolate or whatever it may be, remove it. Just get rid of the food for at least like a month, all right? Get it out of the house, find it anywhere it is and just make it more difficult to be around, right? So if it is chocolate and you have like a chocolate stash in your office, in your cupboard at home and your kids have it, then remove it, okay? Take it out of the house, maybe ask your kids or your husband or wife, whoever it may be, to just put it somewhere that you don't know, okay? Just get it out of your sight, all right? Because we want to kind of maintain and get back control, okay? We want to be in control of food. We don't want that food to control us. Then we want to reintroduce it, right? So when we talk about reintroducing it, we want to reintroduce it in a way that we can control our environment and control the outcome. All right, it's not introducing 12 Mars bars in one go and devouring them all, because we've just lost control. All right, but it's staying in control. So how can we do that? If, for instance, you love chocolate, I don't know, and you're like, okay, I'm really craving chocolate, perhaps you go for a walk, and you go for a walk around the country. There's loads of space right now to go for walks, but you go for a walk, right? And perhaps halfway around, you know there's a shop on the way, and you're with a friend, and you say, you don't go in the shop, maybe you say to your friend, can you just get me a chocolate bar when you're in there? And she gets one, or she gets half one, or you share one, right? You know that like when you reduce it, you're in control, because you can't have more than what you've been given, right? If your friend or whoever it may be buys it for you and you share it, you only have half. There's nothing else you can physically do. On the way back, you're not going to be having more because you can't, right? So reintroduce it and just keep reintroducing it in these situations. Perhaps that starts with once a week, right? And then you go twice a week, and then you go 3 times a week, and then perhaps you go 4 times a week, but you only act on like 2 or 3 days. Yeah. What you're doing is just building up that resilience in your mind, building up those wins and those ticks and those checks in your mind that you're in control, that you've started to gain control back of your environment and of that food and of your identity. Yeah? Then we just, like I said, keep repeating that process, and we get to the point where we can reintroduce it back into the home or back into like our environment on a more day-to-day basis. But now you've gained control, and you're not into like that kind of like losing control situation where you just splurge out, right? But you have an appreciation and understanding, and you don't have to act in it all the time. A few things, right, we have to talk about as well is, and I probably should have put it here somewhere, right? But how we talk to ourselves, what our identity is really important, right? If you, for instance, said like, there's 2 smokers, okay, and they've both quit, right? And then the third smoker comes along and they're out, I don't know, out for drinks, having a good time. And the third smoker says, hey, do you want a cigarette, to both of them? One of them says, hey, I don't smoke. And the other one says, I'm trying to quit. Like, who's more likely to give in to their cravings, right, with having that cigarette? Probably the one that says, I'm trying to quit. Because they haven't changed their identity. They haven't changed their belief systems in their mind to be a different person, all right, to hold themselves to a higher standard. So how we talk to ourselves is really important, right? How we identify with ourselves is really important. That's why I said earlier about having our surroundings and joining forces with other people, right? Because it allows us to maintain better standards, right? It allows us to create better habits and hold ourselves to a higher accountability, all right? That means that we have to strive for better, right? So focus on identity, like start understanding the language that you're talking to yourself in and what it's like, right? Is it fixed? Is it negative? Do you feel like you're out of control when you kind of say stuff to yourself, right? So just try and like be mindful, be aware of that language and try and change that, okay? Like I said, with that kind of butt thing, right? It could be like, I'm never gonna lose this weight, but I know that if I do X, Y, and Z, I can change the way I feel and the way I look. Yeah. Have a little moment as well. If you feel yourself giving into cravings or having a craving at this moment in time, just wait 5-10 minutes. Perhaps you have a glass of water. Go and do something, keep yourself busy, and then come back to that moment. If you feel like those cravings are carrying on and you want to act on them, then act on it. But 99% of the time, I'm pretty sure that if you have a glass of water and you go away, keep yourself busy for 5-10 minutes, you kind of forget about the craving and you move on with your day. Okay, shopping as well. Like when we go food shopping, I know that I will buy all my food shopping online, right? Because when I'm in the aisle of the convenience, like food section, the sweet section, I could go crazy. So I control it, and I say, look, all right, I'll make sure that when I'm food shopping, I'm not hungry. All right, I'll go down the fruits and veggies aisle first, and I fill them up. Okay, that may be online shopping, it may be in store, and I do it in a way that I'm not hungry and I'm with someone. All right. I know that if I'm absolutely ravenous and I have food shopping, I'm gonna be including a lot of food that I probably don't need, all right? Compared to like if I wasn't hungry, and I was generally quite full, in a day I just had a meal, maybe my emotions around the food I buy will be different, okay? And perhaps it'll be different for yourself as well. So just look at when you buy your food and when you're doing it and realize whether you're kind of like hungry, what mood you're in, if you're angry, if you're tired, if you're lonely, okay? Stay in control, like I said about here, right? Just make sure that you control the environment you're in, okay? Or you control the controllables, okay? You can't always predict how other people will react or what other people will say, but you can predict and change the outcome and how you feel about conversations or the environment, right? And then restriction as well, like I said earlier, right? Like a lot of it is to do with dieting and restriction. If you feel yourself splurging out all the time, perhaps like the diet you're on isn't the best one, right? Maybe we can change and reduce some of those restrictions to allow for a little bit more leeway, okay? If we have a little bit more leeway, perhaps those cravings won't be so common. All right? But yeah, that's basically like how you can go about overcoming cravings and breaking bad habits and building better ones. Like I said, there's many different scenarios here, situations. Just find one that suits you and you feel will be beneficial for you, and run with that and let me know how it goes.